Hi, welcome back to Furtive Recap. Today I'm gonna show you movie called Lobster. David, who had just broken up with his wife, was very sad. Because in this era, single people are not allowed to live in the city. They would be forced to be sent to an isolated hotel. Here, singles were given 45 days to find a mate. Once the time is up, those who still being single will be transformed into animals. Before checking in, David turned in all his personal belongings. Here, David lived with his brother, but his brother was transformed into a dog because he failed to find a mate a few years ago. In the hotel, besides the uniform, each person is equipped with a tranquilizer gun. This is the weapon used to hunt down the loner. The loner was the single people who didn't want to stay in the hotel. Each captured loner, they got one more day. They would have to find the mate before the finding began. The hotel manager emphasized the rules and regulations of the place. He asked David what animal he wanted to become. David chose to become a lobster because in his opinion, lobster's blue blood has a noble aura and lobsters live a long life. They can always retain the function of fertility. David's choice was appreciated by the manager, but before leaving, the manager still had David's right hand locked behind his back and put a lock on his belt. In this way, they hoped to remind David of the benefits of having a mate. David would never forget the first night at the hotel. He needed one hand to handle the chores. Even getting his pants off before bed became a struggle. The next day at breakfast, David met John and Robert. They told David, even if they find a mate in the hotel, the couples would still be on the cruise ship for 15 days of vacation to test them. After testing their emotional fidelity, the hotel would hold a party for the singles. It plucked up David's courage. He asked a pretty girl, who nosebleed a lot, to dance, since the pairing required the two to have something in common, but the nosebleeding girl wasn't interested in David. With the alarm bell ringing, the crowd left the party. They went to the forest to catch the loner, who was hiding there. David was a little clumsy as a child. He came back with nothing from this operation. However, a heartless woman on the team caught for loners at once. After dawn, the single people watched a skit arranged by the hotel, a short skit arranged to warn them of the horrors of living alone. In addition, the hotel's maids would torture these men every day with their lust to strengthen their determination to find a mate. And the secret of Robert's masturbation was soon discovered by the hotel manager. So to punish him, the manager ordered a waiter to force his right hand into the toaster. Robert, who had no hope of finding a mate, just wanted to pick a good animal and start over. But John told him that the surgery was horrible because a relative of his had worked in the department of a hotel. A few days later, on the way to the hunt, a middle-aged woman who liked to give people cookies sat down next to David to get rid of being single as soon as possible. She kept seducing David, but David was not interested in her and refused to interact with her because in the hotel, the man and woman who have the same traits can only be paired successfully. So to pursue the girl who always nosebleeds, John often broke his nose to make the illusion of an unintentional nosebleed. They soon became a couple, moved into a double suite. They will live there for 2 weeks. Then they will move to the yacht for another 2 weeks of testing. After the test, the two can return to the city life. John's success gave David the idea. He found a blonde woman who insisted on being single. Seeing that the woman had reached the last day of finding a mate, David tries to make a run for it, but the blonde was unwilling to compromise. She was quickly turned into a horse with short legs. David had only 6 days. Being desperate to get out of here, he went back to hit on the heartless woman, watching the cookie woman's suicide. He pretended to be heartless and unconcerned, hoping this will make the heartless woman feel they are the same kind. The heartless woman tested David. She deliberately pretended to be stuck in the throat while taking a bath. David was not moved. His expressionless state successfully fooled the heartless woman. She finally chose to pair up with David. Then, they stayed in the room together. But the woman didn't stop testing. To unmask David's fake emotion, the woman killed David's brother. Faced with the murder of his brother, David finally shed tears. Once there are not true factors, they will be transformed into the most disgusting animal, so David chose to run away. Somehow, the hotel maid helped David. They together knocked out the Heartless with a tranquilizer gun. They were going to drag her into the transformation room to clear the suspicion of the waitress. David stunned the waitress again, then escaped from the hotel. He rushed into the forest in a panic. There he encountered a group of the loner. Here also are the same harsh rules as the hotel. For example, except for normal communication, no intimate interactions between the sexes are allowed. Everyone must remain single. Anyone who flirts with each other will have their lips cut off. The punishment is extremely harsh. A short-sighted woman noticed David wearing glasses. She had good feelings about David. But due to the strict rules, she did not dare to confess too much. Then, as a loner, David met Robert in the forest. To prolong his time, he was ready to hunt his best friend. "Hello!" At that moment, the short-sighted woman rushed out and stabbed Robert. While the man was on the ground, David grabbed the shotgun and knocked Robert to the ground. To thank the short-sighted woman for saving his life, he shot 2 rabbits for the woman as promised. The short interaction also made them confide in each other. On the other hand, the hotel maid sneaks into the forest. She brought important information for the leader and related items. It turns out that she is one of the leader's spies in the hotel. But to get the right to stay in the hotel, the maid has been living with the dentist. With pregnant, she couldn't stand it. So the leader told the maid, if she finished one last job, she would be able to join her organization. Then, using the uniform provided by the maid, the leader took David and the short-sighted woman to the mall to purchase some goods. To prevent the loner from sneaking into the city, the police will always patrol the mall, interrogating men and women who travel alone. David was also interrogated. Fortunately, the short-sighted woman appeared. In time, the intimate made the police lower the guard. After walking out of the mall, David accidentally learned that the woman was short-sighted. The common trait made his heart ripple. The short-sighted woman also began to spend time alone with David. Both of them can't help but show good impression to each other. That night, the leader used the key given by the maid. Quietly lead the group to break into the hotel manager's room. They forced the manager's husband to kill his wife. And under the test of life and death, the man chose to compromise. But to the man's surprise, there was no bullet in the gun. The crowd saw that the once loving couple had turned against each other. They returned to the camp and danced with satisfaction. David and the short-sighted woman also began to enjoy the happiness of being with each other, but to prevent their behavior from being discovered by other loners, they invented a set of sign language to communicate. With the intention, then they decided to go back to the hotel for a pairing and went to the city to start a new life. Just after the two had planned everything, the leader learned the truth through David's diary to break up the couple. The leader brought the short-sighted woman to the city and tricked her into having an operation. The woman thought it was just a short-sighted surgery, but then discovered that she had been blinded. The angry woman tried to attack the leader with a knife, but accidentally killed the maid, and the leader took the blind woman back to the camp after she calmed down. After realizing that the two had no more common traits, David was anxious. Their escape plan had to be postponed. In the meantime, David kept trying to find other traits in common, but the results were disappointing. Finally, David decided to blind himself so that he could live with the woman. Before leaving, David attacked the leader of the loner and buried her in the pit he had dug. After the revenge was over, David and the blind woman escaped from the forest. They held hands and traveled a long way to a restaurant. David asked the waiter for a pair of knives and forks, then hid in the bathroom. While ready to go blind, David hesitates. This made him hesitant to do it. At that moment, the blind woman in the seat is alone and helpless. She could only wait anxiously for the return of her lover.